New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
And hello again, dear ones. Dr. Robert with you over here. We seem to have lost Reverend Z. Here we are.
Yes. Rev Z, right here. Okay, I'm right here.
And our special guest today is Reverend Dr. Deborah Johnsonnn. She is someone who, you were an icon when I walked into the door of New Thought, and that's over 20 years ago. Your official bio here says you've been involved in New Thought for nearly 50 years, 40 years as a religious science practitioner, over 30 years as a New Thought minister, a founder of the Inner Light Ministries, and a founding member of the Agape International Spiritual Center. More places than you have served. You have taught just about everywhere. One of the ones I found on here that I didn't know was that you oversaw the visioning process for the name change to Centers for Spiritual Living, which was happening right when I was kind of getting into all of this. I've got your book right back there on my shelf, one of two, The Sacred Yes and Your Deepest Intent. Reverend Dr. Deborah, it is so much fun to have you here. Help us out, jump in. What did I forget, or what does the audience need to know for us to be able to get started in this conversation today?
Well, thank you to some of my favorite colleagues. I also oversaw the integration process of the two branches of religious science and have done a lot of consulting and organizational development, particular emphasis on cultural diversity. And I'm not saying that it's bragging rights, but just to be able to put some of my comments into context, because I've been working on these things and thinking about these things like literally for decades, and helping to kind of craft our way forward as a movement. So I want to say thank you for hosting this forum, which is extremely, extremely important. And I want to say thank you to all of you who are, in fact, joining in. There's no question that we are in a deep inflection point from a historical standpoint. Not merely the larger things that are going on in the news, but what's happening within our own New Thought movement. And movements never happen in a vacuum. They're always happening within context of something else. So before we get started, let me just clarify a little bit about what I mean when I say the New Thought movement. I'm not just talking about the organizations that are involved in it. You know, institutions like Centers for Spiritual Living and Unity and the Universal Fellowship for Better Living, the Agape communities, the independent communities, divine science, and on and on. Yes, that configuration are part of the branches that from an organizational standpoint carry forth the message. But I want to talk about the message itself today. That's what I want to talk about. And how I would define it is that I would say that the New Thought movement is a metaphysical metaphysical approach to living that integrates universal spiritual principles, science, and philosophy. It was, in fact, born out of Protestant mysticism with a particular emphasis on individual consciousness and how that related to healing. And I would say that we're at a point now in the movement where we're stretching and growing and perhaps even struggling with a broader understanding about what all of that means in terms of collective consciousness and the healing that has to happen at the collective level, particularly in regards to things like equity and justice. So it's that broader kind of mindset that I want to talk about now. Anything you want to add to that so people understand what we're talking about?
I think you did a great job there. As you were sharing that, I flashed back to the last Parliament of the World Religions, where I basically pulled you in front of a camera, gave you a microphone, and just said, "What is New Thought?" And you had no preparation, and it sounded a lot like what you just shared with me. That's what I love. So the consistency that you bring to this, because I think it is important we look at this from that perspective of a movement that is New Thought versus, oh, I'm just making this organization move forward, or this is my organization or it's collectively together that we're becoming more and more powerful, I believe.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah, and as you said that, as you was giving that description, my mind immediately went to the Egyptian sacred sciences, which is based on a metaphysical platform. And you look at all of the various mythologies that are there. They're stories, but they're stories with principles and how to extract laws out of those principles to build a world that, in some cases, they still can't build today, whether it's physical, mental, emotionally, or spiritual. And that's what we need now. And so I'm on board 100%.
Yeah, I agree, Rebzi, and I'm glad that you pointed that out, because that's exactly where I was about to go. That what I've been noticing through the decades is a shift and a shift in focus, where a lot of the focus now is what I would call transformational, okay? Where it's taking a look at the outer forms, focusing on those, and seeing, well, what can we do or shift from an individual consciousness level, the outer forms, so that we have sort of like a better experience within our own personal lives. But the roots of all of this is what you're talking about, Rebzi. It isn't so much about transformation as it is transmutation, where it looks at sort of an alchemy process, where you're not looking at what is and trying to reshape that. You're looking at the energetic causation behind it all. And how do we tap into that? How do we ignite that? How do we become so one with it in our consciousness that we're able to be co-creative in the universe? That the healing aspect is what it feels like to me we've gotten away from, even on the individual level. But until we reclaim it, even on the individual level, we're not going to be able to step up to the plate, so to speak, in what we need to do on the collective level about going beyond what we see to the creative force back behind it and making some stuff happen. Yeah. And that's so spot on, because, as you were saying that, the transmutation, I think about some of those Egyptian gods with, a ibis head or the head of a cow, or showing these these images in nature that are transformative, and how they looked at nature to observe and extract laws and principles, and how to transform from one thing, transmutate almost, in terms, not just
the outer changing, but change to something totally different. And that's what we need now, because it's like I can take all the furniture in the room and move it in a different direction, in a different place, but it's still the same room and it's still the same furniture and nothing's really changed. But to make it change, I got to start knocking down some walls and taking maybe some furniture out and doing something totally different. And that's where we are now, I think. We're just going around in the same room, rearranging furniture, but at the end, nothing's really changing.
Yeah, it's a question of a shift of identity. Of identity. You know, in scripture, when Jesus was questioned about what were the greatest commandments, he did a flip on them. He didn't describe activities. Okay. He didn't describe behaviors. He didn't talk about ritual. He described the commandments as a matter of consciousness and of self-identity and perception, where he said to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind. And this is the agapeo love. This is the oneness love. And then as an extension of that, out of your oneness with God, to love your neighbor, to love everybody else as yourself. So it shifts our identity. And too often we're seeing ourselves as the outer effect. We're seeing ourselves as the byproduct. Right. You know, I am the bankruptcy. I am the cancer. You know, I am the divorce. You know, I am this, I am that. And how do I stop becoming that? Oh, no. What you are is greater than all of that. And if we really think about it, healing traditions, whether it's psychotherapy, whether it's recovery programs, are all really based on this. To say that you are more than whatever it is that's ever happened to you or anything that you've ever done. That, yes, your body may have been molested, but there's something within you that's never been raped. Yes, you might have been a practicing alcoholic, but there's something within you that is beyond an addict. And it doesn't even know about that stuff. And until we tap into that, we're not going to get anywhere. Right. So this, and I'm inviting you to talk about this, you know, Reverend Robert, this piece that you just dropped, where it speaks of, and you were crediting for me for helping to help shape your thinking around this. That part of our challenge here as a spiritual movement is to learn how to stand in the and. That there's that personal experience. And there's the spiritual experience. There's the you that's done all of these things, that's gone through all of these different, you know, conditions and circumstances. And then there's a transcendent you. Okay, but they both exist. And too often we get into this trying to trade one out for the other. So if I'm being really transcendent, I can't speak of the pain. I can't speak of the worry or the fear of those things that I'm going through. And on the other hand, until something really happens in the outer world, somehow it's Pollyannish of me to claim that I'm anything more than this stuff that's going on. We do that at the individual level and the collective level, but right. We have to be able to hold the space for both. We do violence to people when we make them have to deny their human experience. Okay.
I think this is actually, to me, and you're really hitting on it, that this is part of what has kept New Thought relatively small as a global philosophy, as a global player in religion and spirituality and all these places. And the more, and I've been guilty of it. We, as New Thought, I've heard myself spiritually gaslight people. You know, it was before as a minister, so you know, I'll give myself a little credit there. I was still learning, and I am still learning, and that's where I dropped a link in the chat for you folks. My recent Substack article that came out this morning, but it was born of a conversation with you last week, and I do want to say while we're here that I'm so honored you continually invite me to come support what you're doing in your work and your workshops, and it was in the debrief from one of these events that I was able to participate in. It was in the debrief where you said it straight up. We have got to be able to see that we have been victimized, but we are not victims. And that by explaining to people, this is what happened. This is what happened to me. It is not your grandmother's philosophy that says, oh, how did you bring that into your life? And what are you thinking that makes that happen? The randomness of the universe happened, and this happened to me. But I don't have to make it define who I am. And so the title of it was This Happened, I'm Still Here. And I think anyone out there can relate to this, that we have stuff that happens. The question is, how do we use this philosophy? How do we use these principles to stand back up, to get back in the arena, to keep doing the work that we're here to do, and use that kind of as that alchemic, is that a word? That alchemy, use that as the alchemy to bring me to a greater understanding of the New Thought philosophy and the movement. And I'm healing myself, and as I heal myself, I'm able to support the organizations and the communities that I love and are around me, and that's how we change the world.
Yeah. One of the things that saddens me is when I hear people say that they feel like they've been blamed.
Yeah.
They've been blamed for their conditions, whatever that is. And I can imagine somebody, standing at the base of the cross and looking up at Jesus and saying, what is that in your consciousness that got you up there?
Yeah. Why don't you change that stinking thinking real quick here? And and we in New Thought, we hear the story. This is like the ultimate trope at this point. I came in the door, I sat in the back row, and I cried for the first 4, 6, 8 weeks I was showing up, and then I was healed. What we don't hear are the stories of the people that ran away because they heard things that said your rape was your fault. Right. That's not, and I don't think anybody in New Thought ever intends to make that statement but that's how it comes across when we have when those that think they're evolved like to tell people that they think aren't evolved how they can get evolved. I think we run into some problems there.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say quickly that what I'm hearing is it's often spoke about in the Greek philosophy, which we won't go there, but this drama, right? The Greek drama where we have an actor that puts on different masks, but that one actor is playing all of the parts, right? And no matter how many masks that actor puts on, the actor itself is still whole and complete and has the ability to look at the different aspects of things and personify them, right? The mask, but still come home. And what we've, I think, missed a little bit, we're missing that coming home piece. We're missing that divine center that we're operating from, and we're getting stuck in 1, 2, 3 of the masses and thinking that's the whole drama of life, if you will, and it's not.
I'm reminded of a conversation I had a few years ago. I went to this retreat center, and fabulous retreat center, newly opening, and I was sitting there with the owner, who just a really, really lovely man, actually a billionaire from the tech industry. And this whole time that he had spent renovating, putting hundreds of millions of dollars into this retreat center, his wife was struggling with stage 4 cancer. And he was just sharing with me his anger and his frustration. And he said he was tired of everybody, coming at her and saying that you know, somehow or another it was her fault, or you know, she had something to do with it. And you know, basically he was saying, like, you know, stuff just happened. It's like it just happens. You know, and I don't want to hear all that. And I basically gave him some condolences, and I apologized. I said I apologized for how some of our spiritual leaders, you know, put things forward. I said, perhaps a better way than saying that everything that's happened is like for a purpose, like the purpose you brought it on or something like that. Maybe a better way to look at this is nothing happens without meaning. And he leaned over, he got his writing pad, and he says, and he took a deep, he says, I can deal with that. Like nothing happens without meaning. But the conversation, which I would like for us to understand, is that there is never one singular factor that is the causation of anything. Okay, I don't. It's like I don't care what it is. Everything is a constellation of the things that have gone before us, the technologies, the food we eat, the additives that are put in the food that we eat. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But what we are here to say is that regardless of how it came into your life, regardless of the factors that brought it there, individual or collective, we're not stuck. That none of that has the last word. And that within us is a power, within us is a presence. And as we connect with it, we can shift the experience that we have in our lives. The experience is not just the facts of what happened. Our experience is how we name it. That's what creates the experience. You know, there's pain, but then there's suffering. Suffering's optional.
Two different.
Yeah, we may not be able to get rid of all the pain, but the degree to which we think that it's suffering. Okay. Which leads me to another thing that I wanted to talk about today, which is how I think that it is our charge as part of a New Thought movement to be a bridge between the quote unquote spiritual and the secular, even the quote unquote religious and the secular. So in my life, the way that I've been approaching this is I have my religious institution, formerly a church, Inner Light Ministries, Santa Cruz, California, almost 30 years. You know, I'm the founder. There's also a new nonprofit organization called Unleashing Our Future that I founded. And Rev Robert, you were just mentioning about participating in some of that programming. And what Unleashing Our Future does is it teaches the same spiritual principles, but in a more stealth-like fashion. Okay. Where it's kind of like under the radar, because more and more people are defining themselves as non-religious, you know, non-churched, and they're needing something that's practical. They're needing something that speaks to the concerns of their lives, regardless of who they are. There's a diversity that we need to be able to address, and particularly to be able to message to younger people, including younger families. The balance here, though, is that we also need to make sure that we don't abandon religious roots. One of the things I'm really pleased of is the way that we've had more and more prominence in the Parliament of the World Religions. As a matter of fact, right now, and a couple of hours ago, I was just on a Zoom call with her. I'm with her every Tuesday. Reverend Charlene Manuel, African American minister, is now the president of the Parliament of the World Religions. For the first time in its history, it has a new thought person over the parliament.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this Parliament of the World Religions is just extraordinary. Where it's literally that. It's a parliament where people come in from all over the world. I think there was something like 8,000 people at the last one in Chicago.
Yeah.
I know we were all there, and Rev Robert, your organization, the organization, the two of you was videotaping, all of our sessions. And if I'm not mistaken, the New Thought movement actually had the largest contingency, almost 300 people, we brought to the parliament. And for the sustainability of our movement, I think it's really important that we be able to be in those discussions, work with our colleagues, show up as clergy when it's necessary to show up, to bring a voice of faith to matters that are going around in the world, and to not be so hierarchical and institutional that we can't be there amongst the people who really don't care about pomp and circumstance, and they just want a word. Give me a word to help me with my life. And I think we can do both. I think it's imperative that we do both.
Yeah, going back to that original statement that you made about the alchemical process or the alchemy of life, right? Because what the alchemy teaches us is that life is about the mixture of the alchemical products at the right moment to produce the right thing, right? And as we look now, as people are less enchanted, if you will, about religious life, in some cases spiritual life, right? Because in a lot of ways it's been pushed on people, and now people have a little more information. But when you are able to show them, like in the chemistry lab, if I'm able to show you, if I mix product A, B, and C, I'm gonna get this thing here, whatever that is, that's undeniable. It's irrefutable. And when, as I'll teach in this religious science, it's like, okay, part of that says I can do it again. If I mix the same thing in the same proportion, I'm going to get the same results. And so when we begin to look at life in that alchemical way of, and my favorite thing is to have our lab book that we write. Oh, I put too much of being in that thing, people, how to live their lives in this manner, because it's individual and collective. Then we begin to say, now we can take this and put on this new coat of armor, as they say, and step out in a new light, in a new world.
Yes. There more and more people are getting attuned to the new science. They're listening to, Joe Dispenza and, Jill Bolt Taylor and Deepak Chopra and, Greg Braden and, Taggart and Tolle and, all of these people. And I think that that's good.
Yes.
I really do, because they are explaining the science back behind the principles that we're talking about. We're metaphysical. Okay. So it's the physics that's behind it. And I think that it is important that we take advantage of that window. So of opportunity to use that as a leverage to reach people. So it doesn't sound so woo-woo about what's happening with your thinking and how your reality gets created and what happens in the physical healing of the body.
Right.
The stuff that we talk about now would have been considered so woo-woo-woo. But now if you go to the best medical institutions in the world, they're talking about the role of love in healing. They're talking about the role of meditation, of visualization, of controlling your mind, and the power of community and support, to help you heal. The things that we've been knowing and talking about all the time, and there's some backup now that's helping us to take a look at that. Where I find that we're still struggling some here. we're still struggling with the collective consciousness, and particularly in the social political arena. Well, we have this idea that you have to separate out, politics, spirituality, and it isn't quite as simple as all of that. And I think maybe we need to go to a break and come back to this.
We do need to go to a break. You're right. I agree. It is not that simple as all that, but we're going to dig into that, folks. Right after these messages, we just want to let a couple of our sponsors say hello, let our guests take a sip of water, but we're going to come back with more with Rev D on New Thought Today right after these messages. Please stay with us. Stay tuned. We'll be back after this.
Welcome to the Convention of the Americas 2025, Rising Together. Join us for a truly bilingual retreat experience on the shores of the beautiful Lake Chapala, Mexico. July 22nd through July 26th, 2025, at the Hotel Villa Monte Carlo in Jalisco, Mexico. Featuring Reverend Jeffrey Ryan, Dr. Jose de Lira Sosa, Reverend Dr. Kathy Ann Lewis, Reverend Dr. John Waterhouse, and Reverend Dr. David Bruner. Registration is now open, and payment plans are available. Simply visit www.conventionoftheamericas.com. Come be part of a transformative gathering with powerful presentations, workshops, networking time, and just good old relaxing and connecting. Plus, you can learn more about the science of mind and how to live this powerful philosophy in your life. Transform your life at Convention of the Americas 2025, Rising Together.
And we're back with more of New Thought Today here on the New Thought Media Network. Myself, my co-host, Reverend LZ, and our special guest, Reverend Deborah Johnsonnn from the Inner Light Center, and so much more. And right before the break, we were just getting into that there. So I want to kind of come back around because I think we're all in agreement that New Thought faces some challenges. And yes, we're not the only place sharing these principles anymore. From it used to be Oprah and Chopra, and now it's Tony Robbins and what's the other guy's name, and Sarah Landon and Mike Dooley and so many folks that have woken up to what these principles can do. And part of what I'm seeing, Rev D, is this: we're coming together as one a bit more. We're coming to New Thought a bit more, and I think leaving some of the denominationalism on the wayside. But ultimately, we do face some challenges. So, if you would, help us kind of chart a course. Where's everything headed?
Well, what I would say is that the individuals that you mentioned who are carrying on it's like the principles. it's been this way for a long time. There's this thread between the 12-step programs, the humanistic movements, the Norman Vincent Peales, the Get Rich, the Carnegies, the Rockefellers. There's a way in which this information has been used for personal healing, and the way that it has been used for personal prosperity have been, I'd say, kind of like the two fronts. A lot on individual consciousness. Okay. This movement was born out of a rugged Protestantism. And the thing that I feel like is calling us right now is that we have to remember, as I was saying before the break, that you can separate church and state as institutions, but you can never separate politics and spirituality. You can't do that, because every politic is based upon a spirituality. It's based upon a notion of the natural order of things. How is it supposed to be? We're rapidly approaching 4th of July. It's right there in the Declaration of Independence, the preamble. That's a spiritual preamble. We hold these truths to be self-evident. It's so evident, I don't even have to prove it. Okay? That all men are created equal and endowed by their creator. Okay? Not the government, but their creator with these inalienable rights. Now, we know that when they were writing that, they weren't really meaning everybody. Okay? However, the words are true. Okay? And we need to be careful not to dismiss the truth of something just because the messenger can't live up to the message. We used to say, and we used to say growing up, the truth will be told even if it takes a liar to tell it. Okay, so there's this idea here that there is something that is transcendent of human law. There is an isness that's here. The civil rights movement, all of these movements, they weren't just about laws or civil rights. It was a spiritual rights movement, kind of like I was talking about earlier, where it shifts the fundamental relationship that we have with each other. If we are all equal under God, then that means everything's got to shift and transform around here, because there's no justification for it. Too much of the New Thought movement historically has been so allergic to wanting to look at the news, wanting to look at what's happening in society, wanting to look at matters of equity and justice and fairness, and feeling like all of the work is just done within. Great, but faith without works is dead. And I think we're being called upon now, particularly in such an increasingly multicultural, multi-international kind of a world, where we are all impacting each other, and you can't heal what you don't feel. So it means that we have to grapple with some legacies. We have to grapple with things that really have happened. Because if we do that same kind of spiritual bypass on the collective level that we were talking about at the first part of the show on the individual level, we can't get there. So we all have to learn, and this is part of the work that I've been doing in the movement for a long time, is helping us to get the skills, the perspectives, the tools, the paradigms to be able to hold that tension between the oneness of all of us and the way that we express in variety and diversity, how our lives are impacted by not only our individual consciousness, but our collective consciousness. And to have the audacity, rather than hide from the news, they're like, oh, I don't want to look at that. Feeling like it has more power than you, for us to stand forth strong the moment that I found out that we bombed Iran a couple of nights ago. Within an hour, I was on a prayer call. I had called immediately, and there must have been like 30 people that came from all over the place. Say, we've got to pray, and we've got to pray now. So I want everybody that's listening to this to don't feel like it's some kind of betrayal of your spiritual principles, to speak up, to stand up, that somehow you're not being spiritual. If you get involved with social justice, I would say it's the other, that our spirituality is demanding of us. It is demanding of us that we go deeper.
Yeah, and the thing that strikes me there is I was recently turned on to this term of this 14 billion year old scripture called nature. And when you look at the holisticness of it, it allows for everything and make adjustments. It doesn't rule anything out. And so, for me, when I look at the rainforest and I look at, there's some great documentaries on the relationship between the mushrooms in the rainforest and the great big trees, and how they have this symbiotic relationship to support one another, and when to yield and when to move forward. And so if we look at that at the individual component, that's what we take in and how we adjust it to make ourselves stronger. But then again, at the collective level, is how do we do that at the communal level, so that we don't allow things to slip under the rug, so to speak, and become a bigger problem than deal with it right up front. And that is this yin and yang, if you will, this give and take relationship of how we begin to look at, as it's said in some traditions, a way of life as opposed to some spirituality or religion. It has to become a way of life where everything is supporting everything else.
True.
Yeah. I love where this is. I love where we get to go because I think it is important to skip the spiritual bypass, to not just bury our heads in the sands and say we know this stuff, but that isn't gonna affect me. And truthfully, you all know me, I've been a little upset with some of our colleagues that sat the last election out, or even worse, voted for what is now in office. And it takes, I guess, all of my spiritual strength to not want to reach out and say, I told you so. This war is on your hands, right? But I don't want to do that. I don't want to ruin the relationship, the opportunity to have the conversations at a different level, because I think everyone that understands New Thought is imperative for what's to come.
Yes.
We have to be all right, here's how it's being said. We have to be that defense mechanism in consciousness that is willing to stand up and say, we're not going to allow this to continue. And we have to and the only way to do that is bring more love into the world, continuously bring in more love into the world, even if I can't understand how in the world you can justify those actions.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, you use the word defense, and some people get a little tense when you start talking in those kinds of terms. But when I get that, I always tell the person that inside your body right now, there is a war going on between white blood cells and anything that's not supposed to be in there, that's going to compromise your immune system. and you want them to be on the case. Now, they're only going to jump on the case when they need to. When they're not needed, they just sit back and hang out. But when they need to move forward and do the work that needs to be done to protect the whole, to protect the community of us, it does so. And as soon as it finds that balance again, as soon as it finds that ebb and flow, it steps away and allows it to get back to another kind of relationship with the wholeness.
Yep, exactly. Folks, we're going to take another real quick break and say thank you to our organizational sponsors and individual donors, but we've got our third segment. We've got more with Rev D coming up in just a moment, including our final thoughts. So don't go away. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, One Heart Retreats, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Kitchener, Unity Spiritual Center Ottawa, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Begin Within Ministries, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, and the Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, as well as all of our individual donors. Thank you for being part of the New Thought Media Network. Please like, share, and subscribe. New Thought Media Network, positively inspiring.
And we're back with more of New Thought today here on the New Thought Media Network. Our special guest, Reverend Dr. Deborah Johnsonnn, is with us, and we've been having a great conversation. So if you're just catching up, well, watch this last segment, and then you can go back and watch the first two segments, because if you're watching live, you can't rewind. You got to wait till we're finished. But we're having a great conversation here. And Rev D, before we completely run out of time today, and I believe if I've learned anything from you in the last 20 years, it's that we've got to be involved. Whether it's in our local spiritual communities, whether it's just in our own self-healing, if it's in a more secular nature, taking these philosophies into our lives, into our world, into our work, into our businesses. And you, as you were saying earlier, you've diversified your ministry to be able to support in those ways. What would you say to people that are watching today that aren't sure what to do next, or what comes next, or how they can best be a part of what's happening here in the New Thought movement?
What comes to me is the fire triangle. And whenever you want a fire burning, I don't care what it is, if it's in your own life, your organization, your family, like the nation, you need these three elements. You need heat, you need fuel, you need oxygen. You need heat, fuel, oxygen. The heat is disruptive. The heat actually brings that alchemy process, because it lights up. Sometimes heat's not comfortable. It can be like agitating. A lot of times youth play like that role of heat in, our lives or situations. Or you might think of it as passion. Like, what is it that gets you and moves you and gets you from being unstuck? Okay. Then there's the fuel. Okay. The fuel is that like steady, consistent, the sustenance, the things that you can come back to that are very grounding, very sustaining. And then there's the oxygen. Okay. The oxygen is that which lets things breathe. Okay. It's the inspiration. It's the transcendent. And, and when that wind comes through, it takes all those little embers and sparks and reignites them again. And I'm saying this to say that what I find that in organizations and even in movements, people tend to play those different roles. And then they get mad at other people for not playing that same role. Okay? So maybe you're not the heat right now. Maybe you're not the one out in the streets. Okay? But just because you're not the one out in the streets doesn't exempt you from praying. Okay? So while they're out in the streets, you get a circle of people and you pray. Or you do what it is that you need to do. There's an example that comes to my mind that I heard Reverend James Lowry say. He was one of the people that marched with King Jr. I believe he was in Mississippi and Alabama or Mississippi, I think Mississippi. And he was talking about this march that they were going to do back in the civil rights days. Not the civil rights days, but you know what I mean, in the movement during King's era. And the government was passing out hams to all the Black folks to bribe them to not march or to not doing anything. And everybody kept taking these hams. And he was just so incredibly disappointed. And he says the day of the march, there were very few people. It even started to rain. And he's like, God, are you even against us too? So they started, and as the days went by, more and more people came, and the march kept getting bigger and bigger. And he says, by the end of the march, when they made it to the state's capital, there were truckloads of ham sandwiches that were there to feed the protesters. Okay, so I said, feed them. You know, there's always something that you can do. Babysit for the ones in the street. I mean, I'm using this metaphorically, but to give you a chance to see that everybody has a way that they can be involved. Make a phone call, write a postcard. Let your energy be part of the energy that's moving towards the transmutation. Okay? Because the absence of it, and I really want you to hear what I'm saying, the absence of it is a vote for the status quo. Okay? If you do nothing, that means that your energy is going to support and ratify the way things are existing.
Yeah.
Okay. So if you want something else, you have to be a part of the energy that moves it in a different direction. I always say that pain pushes until vision pulls. So one of the things that I'm doing now is practically on a monthly basis now with this new organization that I'm with, Unleashing Our Future, is we're having these play shops. It's 2 hours, they're online, they're free, where we are envisioning the possibilities for some of the really tough political issues like democracy and immigration and climate change. And you have a chance to hear yourself, how you typically are talking about these things, get a chance to vision about it, see how your current narrative isn't gelling with your higher vision, and how to transform what you're saying, how we can not just be reactive in responding to what's out there, but we can put forth a different vision, but we have to stop long enough to tune into it and not just react to what everybody else is doing.
Yeah. I want to, you brought up the Play Shop show. I want to share just a moment because this is how it works, folks. I mentioned this earlier. I feel really honored to be invited to be a facilitator and support others that are coming into this. And, you know, it's a pretty high functioning group of ministers and practitioners and other folks that have been around the movement a long time that are facilitating the small groups on your behalf. And we learn from you in this, and then we get a chance to practice. And I felt like you might have rigged the results just a little because I got democracy. And it was Saturday, the day, just a week or so ago for a big march, and I'm supposed to be out in the streets with people. And And here's how it worked, though, because my initial response as we were in this, being our human self, was democracy is under attack and must be protected. When they throw arrows, we must throw hearts. But by the time, through the process, through the visioning, through the small groups, through the discussion and the creativity, what I came to realize is we are creating a system of governance based on love and compassion for all. And that's the kind of transmutation that we can experience, and that I think is so imperative for us to experience, because just as you're saying, if we don't, well, we're just going to keep getting more of what is. And I don't know about everybody, but I'm not real happy with what I'm seeing out there in the world of what is right now.
Yeah. And I think that's part of what we offer as a movement in terms of our spiritual philosophy, is that we don't have to just react and respond to the facts. There's something that's back behind all of that, okay, that's never been disturbed. There's the perfect ideal. There's divine right action. Call it forth. Call it forth. So everybody listen to this. When your body is sick, it isn't just that you're getting rid of disease. You're pumping up your chi. You're increasing your health. Okay? If in conflictual situations, you aren't just getting rid of hate. You're going to deeper embodiments of love and compassion. You don't just fight the darkness. You turn on the light. Okay? And this is what we're saying here, is that our practice, if we're doing it right, will turn our attention away from expending all of our energy trying to fight what looks like it's lower vibrations, not condemn it, not judge it, but just ease on down the road up to higher embodiments of the spiritual qualities that are there. It's not that they're missing. It's not that they're missing anywhere. They're just not coming forth enough. And we have to be bold enough to speak the word, to declare it, to say, I don't care. I don't care what it looks like. I don't care how long this has been going on. I don't care. I serve something higher. Higher. Freedom is the order of the day. Justice is the order of the day, where we have the audacity to bring forth the highest heaven right here on earth.
Reverend Hope. All right, folks, you're looking at the clock. We're looking at the clock, and we've done plumb run out of time here. However, I have a feeling it won't be too hard to get Rev D to come back and join us again sometime. So
my pleasure, anytime.
I think we'll be able to continue that conversation. But before we do go, as always, we always do have a moment for final thoughts. Rev Z, kick us off, if you will.
Yeah, this has been a great conversation, and I think the final thoughts that I want to leave is that one, when we were talking about that triangle of fire, is that everything had a part. When we look at the communities of old, there were those who marched, there were those who watched the kids, there were those who prepared the food, which speaks to that idea. There is a place for everybody, and every part is important. So find your place and play it. Find your place in the play of life, in the drama of life, and play it, so that we can continue this evolutionary, transformative transmutation from what we think we are to what we were created to be.
Yes.
Beautiful. Thank you. Rev D.
Keep hope alive. And I look at hope as the acronym: heart open, possibility, and engagement. Keep your heart open, stay in possibility consciousness, and stay engaged.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you. Throughout this, I've been reminded of a conversation we had a week or two ago with Reverend Galen McDowell on this program. And in that, we're talking about much the same idea. Find your place. New Thought needs preachers, and New Thought needs teachers, and we need people that are going to march, and we need people that aren't going to march but do the prayer work, and we need people to balance the books and do the marketing and all the other things. Find your place, and I think what'll stick with me the most today is find your place and make ham sandwiches. We'll be back again next Tuesday here on the New Thought Media Network, 2:00 Mountain Time. Until then, thanks for being with us. We wish you peace and riches. Bye now.